Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha with Ice Cream Fitness. Alright, to continue this series, today I want to talk to you guys about the fat burning properties of Trenbolone. But hold on, let me give you guys a bicep shot first. Alright guys, Trenbolone is known as the king of steroids. It is arguably the most powerful steroid ever invented by science. However, there are a lot of myths, there are a lot of debates about it, there's a lot of misconceptions about it, and while we don't really have human studies on it because this drug has never officially been used in humans, we have a huge amount of animal data on it because it has been massively studied for the livestock and meat industry. And it has been studied in excruciating detail. If you start Googling studies on it in cattle, mice, rats, you'll be able to find enough stuff to keep you busy for 20 hours reading easily. Now, we know just from various studies done that stronger androgens tend to promote fat burning to a small degree. So what specifically is going on with Trenbolone? Why do some people burn fat on it no matter what they eat, no matter how much they eat? Some even lose 2 or 3% body fat when they are bulking, and all of their skin folds go down, their waist goes down when they gain 10 to 15 pounds bulking with this drug in their stack. Yet other people don't seem to lose any fat on it, and a lot of people claim it has no magical fat burning properties. So what does this animal research say on it? Well, interestingly enough, what we find in cattle is that when Trenbolone is injected by itself, it works too well. And they rarely do that anymore. And the reason for that is because when it's injected in feedlot cattle, they gain over 100 pounds in the next month, but they lose too much fat. So these cattle recomposition as they bulk up, and you lose all the marbling in the meat, and it gets too stringy and hard. And that's not what they want. But what they find is that when they add estrogen to the mix, they gain fat and muscle both normally and can get that nice marbling. Why does this happen? Well, what we have found is that Trenbolone does a couple of things. It causes a huge amount of insulin sensitivity in muscle tissue. It tends to shuttle almost all of the blood glucose that you have directly into the muscle cells, and it tends to cause them to supercompensate and hold more glucose than they're supposed to. However, what it also tends to do is that when any surplus carbs are eaten beyond that, it still forces them into the muscle tissue, and what it can't store there, it shuttles into the cellular mitochondria and burns off its heat energy. And this is what we see in cattle. And then when you notice in humans, guys who are on Trenbolone, they tend to run a slightly higher body temperature. They tend to sweat a lot. And when they eat a carbohydrate meal, 15 to 30 minutes later, their body puts off heat. They break out into sweat, buckets of sweat everywhere. And this is the explanation for that. Now, the other interesting thing with it is that what we find in cattle and in rodents, so two different non-human mammals, we find that when estrogen is low enough in the system, Trenbolone completely inhibits de novo lipogenesis, which is a conversion of dietary carbs into fat. So what that means is that dietary fat becomes the only means of gaining body fat in that organism. And therefore, if dietary fat is kept low enough and the body is still burning enough fat for fuel, it's going to cut into fat stores regardless of protein and carbohydrate intake. They would have an unlimited ceiling. So when you see all of these bodybuilders, and even some who claim to be natural, and then others who obviously aren't, who say they don't count their calories, they just eat clean, which oftentimes means very low fat, without counting their calories, and they still get ripped for a show, I can promise you that person is on Trenbolone. And if they even try to argue otherwise, they are lying to you, because that is what this drug does. We see it in the animals. It causes this effect. And this doesn't happen under normal circumstances. Because under normal circumstances, when dietary fat is dropped ultra low in humans, our body starts storing dietary carbs as fat. It doesn't actually do it very often in active athletic individuals, but when dietary fat goes too low, it starts doing it at a large rate. But the Trenbolone will block that. So these people can actually technically overeat, and they'll just burn off the excess carbs as heat energy, and they'll keep leaning out. Why doesn't it burn fat for everyone? Well, we need to go back and just look at the setup there. First off, if they're eating way too much dietary fat, and they're eating enough of it to overfeed or equal what they're burning for fat fuel, they're still going to hold on to the same amount of body fat and potentially gain some. Also, even though testosterone itself has some mild fat burning properties, testosterone converts into estrogen, and a lot of guys tend to stack a lot of testosterone with their Trenbolone, and if their estrogen levels get too high as a result of this, I would suggest that it would shut off the ability of Trenbolone, just like it does in cattle, to inhibit de novo lipogenesis, which will allow them to start storing surplus carb calories as fat, which will definitely prevent fat burning. So I would suggest to you that those two reasons are why a lot of individuals don't seem to get this magical fat burning effect that a lot of others notice on the drug. And interestingly enough, for some people, even when they eat a ton of fat and they stack a ton of testosterone with it, they still get lean eating no matter what they want. But they seem to be a smaller minority of people. All right, guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope this has been informative, and I will talk to you next time.